Hello and welcome to the Warp Shelf. I'm Frank Duran.
I'm Deshaun Vasquez.
And today we're talking about the C-A-N-D-Y, man. We're talking about Candyman, people. Like, this is, I feel like we should have had an episode on Candyman already, you know? Like, I feel like he may have been in the monster lineup when we were talking about monsters beating up people.
He was, yeah.
He was. So we've talked about our love for Candyman before, but we're really going to get deep on it today because I think Deshaun came out of it being like, I have a fucking lot to say, and immediately said, go see it. And I was like, okay. And I think this movie connects so much with the original film that you can't not talk about.
Yeah,
Candyman.
It's very much it's very much the tried and true reboot / sequel. That's just like other sequels. There were no other sequels.
Yeah, what do you mean, Candyman? Well, that's not true. That's not true. They acknowledge the sequels in like that one last sequence when he's going around the truck. You're like, hey, the other sequels matter. Don't worry about it.
A little bit.
But not to spoil anything. But of course, they're giving a little bit of fan service at the end. You know that this movie's going to be...
Well, that's just acknowledging the original.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
I agree. I think...
Because I don't know if you've seen the sequels.
I have not. I was going... Yeah. So that's what I was... I kind of wanted to watch the other... 2 and 3 and 4. Is there 4? There's 4.
There's 3.
There's 3. Okay.
Yeah.
This is the 4th. And I have not seen 2 and 3. Have you?
I've seen 2, didn't like it, so I didn't watch 3. The biggest mistake was that they moved it out of Chicago to Louisiana, and I'm like, dude, the fact that the first film takes place in Chicago is a big part of its story, and I don't like that you're messing around. And it was just exactly what you're afraid of with a slasher sequel.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, and I think that this movie, before we get deep on it, will be a little bit dividing. Obviously, I see this movie getting review bombed on IMDb.
I've already kind of seen it with like amongst the people I know who have seen it, because I came out of it just like, I really fucking dug it. I like where it went. And I've had other people just like, oh, yeah, I liked it. And I've had someone who's just like, yeah, it was okay. And I'm just...
Okay, well, then you got to tell me, like, why do you feel that way? Like, why did you come out of Candyman, this sequel, hyped about it? Because it is dividing. I think that there's obviously the political edge. There's like, oh man, this movie preaches too much, and you're like, shut the fuck up.
Oh yeah, every time.
Like, please, like, can my movie say something? Like, please, that's all I'm asking.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and then when they don't, you're like, oh, these are vapid. But when they do, they're like, oh, shut up. Like, no, let my film.
So you can't fucking win. So the original Candyman, this sucker right here.
He's got it. He's got it right there.
Good old Shout Factory, always.
Yeah, no, seriously, if Shout Factory, please sponsor us.
If you do
at some
sponsors,
point, like,
we would love to shill.
Jesus Christ, I will sell my body for you because you make such nice Blu-rays. We're not even an ad for it. If you're a fan of this show, you know that you probably have a couple Shout Factories, or even, I mean, obviously you got Criterion. Everybody who listens to the show has a Criterion.
Yeah, I got like 4 Criterion, I think. I have more Shout Factory, but to be honest, most of my physical library is horror because I'm just that type of nerd.
Yeah, he's the deep horror nerd, and that's why I'm excited to hear why you're excited about this, because I definitely liked it a lot, but I have some criticism. So I want to get down on it.
Yeah, I have one particular criticism.
Because I dug this. I think that this is a very direct sequel, and I think that it takes its own flavor. I think it obviously has the Jordan Peele, like, je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, exactly.
And even though he's not directing, but he is producing and writing, and I think that there's a lot to like here, and I think that fans of the original will obviously like this one, but I think also fans of the original will think a big piece is missing here, and that's my main criticism.
Okay,
but go ahead.
So here's my thing. And I had even spoken about this a couple years ago when you, me, and Mary had watched Candyman
Yeah.
because she hadn't seen it. And we were doing the thing where we were looking for something to watch, and you always take forever. So I'm just like, has Mary seen Candyman? Let's just put Candyman on.
Yep.
And like that original film, I have a lot of attachment for because I mean, I'm an easy mark for just sort of a mindless slasher. Like I love Friday the 13th and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Candyman has always been a little deeper
Deshaun
than that.
likes wanton violence. Big surprise to the rest of the
Always.
show.
Yeah. And my biggest worry with any attempt at a new Candyman movie was that it would either shy away from the urban mythology, because let's be honest, it's 2021 at the time we're recording this anyway, before the aliens have come,
Before the apocalypse, guys. Next
before
week.
the
Don't worry
apocalypse,
about it.
and they uncover this on a data disc somewhere as archives.
They're like, I found this tiny hard drive. He transferred all the episodes on.
Yeah. Like, man, I hate that show got canceled because of the nuclear holocaust. I think it really had potential.
I think it could have gone somewhere.
Yeah. And so my biggest worry is that they would shy away from urban mythology because we live in such like a cynical modern world that when you try to talk about urban myths and stuff like that, any
Yeah.
12-year-old on his cell phone could be like, yo, fake news, bro. I looked it up. I checked it out on Snopes. This shit's bullshit. So I feel like it would either shy away from that,
and they said no.
or it would try too much to just tread familiar ground. Like Halloween 2018 had this big problem you sort of run into a lot whenever it's like a reboot / a sequel, or it's just like,
I think
remember?
Chucky's, I think, one of the bigger culprits of that, obviously, with the Child's Play remake, you know, like, is that,
Well-
like, we want to do the same thing, but change it up for the modern
Yeah,
audiences.
Child's
and then
Play-
it just feels like, modern audiences,
Yeah,
you like
it's where it
this? You like
modernizes it
this?
to the point where it seems unrecognizable in places. But there's also the worry of just like it being too member berries-y. Like you don't want like a Halloween 2018 or
You
like a
don't want
Force
an
Awakens.
Anchorman 2. I think everybody can
Yeah.
understand like what like the problem with any bad sequel like Anchorman 2, where it just all Anchorman 2 did was go, you remember Anchorman 1? I don't, but I wrote the script, so we'll try to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, and that's like you can see that in a lot of sequels where they're like they didn't understand why the first one worked, but they're gonna just try to do the first one again. You know, like
So what struck a chord with this one for me is that one, it more or less is a very different story than the first one. It's not
Yes.
really trying to follow those same beats, but it still acknowledges the original in a clever way that doesn't overbear it,
it
but
doesn't
still
feel
is good enough for new audiences.
it doesn't feel too twisty either.
Mhm.
Like I will say that like we'll talk spoilers, guys. Already spoiler warning. We already kind of gone. We're already in that territory. But like if you're listening, spoiler time. But like I think the twist of him being the baby from the original is built up the whole time and kind of alluded to the whole time, that if any original fan likes the original movie, you'll see it almost right away.
I saw it from the initial teaser trailer.
And then you see then of course the minute his mom opens the door, you're like, oh shit, they brought her back. I love this, you know.
So
like you're like, hell
it's like
yes.
I like the cast. I like that it shifts to a primarily black point of view, because one of the original criticisms that you can levy at the original Candyman
absolutely.
is that you can tell it was made by white filmmakers, because it sort of has like this conflicting sort of mythos where Candyman was a victim of racial injustice, and yet he's targeting other black people in Cabrini Green who suffer just like it doesn't really. And then the whole like, of course he's praying after a white woman.
Yeah, and it's like the message doesn't come. I feel like that's kind of the problem, is that the message comes across as like, oh, the violence cycle continues instead. And I feel like the reason why this movie, this new one, is so dividing from the original is that the original has like rules. It puts rules down, very steady rules, but it doesn't. It's it's playing loose with everything. Everything's like, ooh, like this is, and then this one, to either its betterment or detriment, sets a lot more rules and sets more or as Dan Slott would say, mojos for Candyman, you know, like where it's like, this is what Candyman is and has been, and I'm trying to explain it. And I think that either will make people mad because that's not my Candyman. That's not the Candyman I watched. Or they're like, I think most people will watch it and be like, that's cool expansion of what's going on. You know,
Yeah,
like
that's what I liked about it. Like, I hesitate to say the word lore.
yeah.
I'd say mythos. Mythos seems like a better word for
you know,
it.
this is another horror franchise when we're talking.
Yeah.
This is like Jason. This is Freddy. You know, like this is the same. Like, I mean, at this point, it's getting to it where they're said in the same breath. Hopefully,
Yeah.
I hope. You know, like,
And it's one of those things where I love that shift in POV because it actively subverts as well as criticizes the original in the same way that
Yep.
like HBO Watchmen did for the original text,
yeah,
where it was just like, oh, we love it and we show a lot of reference for it and we're not ignoring it. And there's a lot of like foundation for that
Yeah.
build. But we also have shit to say about that original book.
yeah,
And
right.
that's how I feel like this is the direction that this one goes as compared to the original. And I like that they're allowed to just be transgressive and be just like, oh, yeah, there's something weird about that movie, and we sort of want to expand on the mythos to sort of make that congeal a little better.
Yeah. I think absolutely this movie, I think one of my like I think it was a relief to me, but you could tell by the way it was shot. It was definitely shot to be able to cut out any like too gory stuff, you know? Like it was kind of funny. You could tell that like every effect shot, every little wicked gory thing, they were like, we could cut this out if we need to make it PG-13. And I'm glad they went hard R. I think that's
Yeah, I would have been fucking livid.
yeah.
Although to speak about the way it was shot, this is the first Nia DaCosta film that I've ever seen.
Yeah, she
I
doesn't
like
have many. I think she's
no,
only
she's
got
pretty
one other movie, Little Woods, and the
yeah,
other one.
she's pretty new to the game. Although just based on this, I'll probably keep an eye on her more often
Yeah.
because this, at least, which is another problem with like belated sequels, is that you never feel like they have their own distinct style. And this film definitely has its own distinct style and takes little things from the original that were sort of there, like the bees and the mirrors, and like really pushes them as huge
Yeah.
motifs.
Yeah, especially and right from the get-go too. All the logos you see are backwards, like you're looking at
Yeah, I
it
thought
in
that
a
was great.
mirror, like, you know, like, and it kind of alludes that like, you know, like that to that, like in the they play it in the original. They're like, hey, he's in the mirror all the time, but like he obviously comes out and like grabs people. But in like this, it's very much like you can only see him in the mirror, you know, like until the, you know, obviously until the end, you know, like, but like it's when I think he's gained more power. But I really I think that the strongest thing about this movie is, of course, I mean, the directing is absolutely fantastic, but please say because I'm going to butcher his name.
The main actor's name?
Yes, thank you.
Yahya Abdul-Mateen. The second.
Like, hell yeah, dude. Bring in the fucking heat, I think.
This fucking man doesn't miss. What the hell? We've been talking about him for so long.
Yeah, he's killing it. Like, he really is. You know, he's Black Manta. You know, he's in Trial of Chicago 7, which I haven't seen, but Deshaun said was fantastic.
Yeah.
And of course, we were talked about him in Watchmen, you know, like where we were like, he's killing it in this. And I think that I think him and William Burke, the guy who plays William Burke, Coleman Domingo, really fucking bring it this movie. I think they really did such a great job, and I think they bring such strong performances to this horror movie. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say just more stuff that I like and what I was worried about wouldn't happen. The reason I came out of this so positive is because it didn't really fall into any of the traps I was worried about. And that's not to say it's perfect. I have other problems, but nothing in the way that's like I was afraid of with a modern take on a Candyman film.
Yeah.
Like it leans even further into urban myth than the original does. And it also expands on it by saying that myths never really go away so much as evolve with each generation. And that mostly gets into third act stuff,
And
but that's the stuff I like.
I think that they're saying something about the power of telling a story, not
Yeah,
just
oral
by your
storytelling.
by yourself, but by everybody, like everybody spreading the story. And I think that's why I wanted it to go like one step further at the end, and
Mhm.
I go a little bit more unhinged at the end. I like the ending. I'm not saying I don't like the ending. He alludes to maybe doing a show and having like hundreds and hundreds of people say his name and give Candyman even more power, and I think that would have been dope
Yeah,
because they
did
allude
you
to
watch
that.
the entire credit sequence?
No. Oh yes. No. They show the
Yeah,
a
that
bunch of
whole
history.
like shadow puppet thing at
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
end,
Yeah. Yeah.
like that's telling like its own story.
Yeah. I was like, whoa. I was like, holy smokes.
Also, minor note, I love that shadow puppet thing was in the entire movie. I was worried that was just going to be a trailer thing, and it's all over the movie, and it's really dope.
Yeah, because I think that you could have gone, like, you could have just shown footage, and instead they went it's funny, they went the Deathly Hollows route. I felt like
Mhm.
I was like, they're doing the Deathly Hollows bit here, where they're like telling the story, but like in a completely different style, and that
Yeah,
we've
and
already
also,
heard.
and you've seen the movie, and you know when it's like, wait, that didn't happen. But of course, you get the misconceptions as stories change over the decades. So you're like, wait, that didn't happen. That's not how I heard it.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And it's already kind of brings you into that, like, wait, what am I supposed to believe about the Candyman story? Like, what am I I've heard this, oh, I've heard this, like it's kind of already spread, it already starts to spread like that, like already in
Mhm.
your own mind. And I think that that's so interesting because it's like, I think there's obviously a lot of power in public storytelling and just community, like, and what happens, and obviously it's funny because the Candyman's a story that's being told out of the suffering and the spite going on in something green. What's it green? What's the neighborhood called?
Cabrini Green.
Cabrini Green. It's like all the suffering at Cabrini Green turns into this story, and and it kind of like there's a couple times where they say like, oh, it's just a justification for these bad things, like it's like,
Yeah,
and you're like, no, like
the new
there's
framework.
power to this.
Yeah, the new framework like just gives it so much more pathos, in some ways even more than the original does. And it's good that it takes place in Chicago again, because Cabrini Green was a real place. I
Yeah.
have two friends who live in Chicago, and just because I'm a Candyman nerd, and Cabrini Green is in certain like Dresden Files books, because those books also take place in Chicago, I
Dope.
like pick their brains about it. It's just like, oh yeah, Cabrini Green was a really bad project at the time, like at that time, especially like before, like right before they were born, because as they were kids, was when it was starting to get like gentrified.
Gentrified.
Yeah, and they were just like, that was the place, like, you avoided, that was, like, the bad part of town, and then, rich white people came in and tried to clean it up.
So obviously, a huge part of this movie is talking about gentrification and what
Mhm,
that means, and what that means when it comes to when a neighborhood changes. Like what happens to stories, what happens to what happened there. Like,
mhm.
and it's kind of, I love the arguments going on here because obviously it's not being like gentrification is not happening, like that's the other argument, because obviously it's happening, like, like it's not like a not, like you're like, come on guys. It's one of those things that you're like, they're able to bring up an actual pretty good argument against like him, being like, this place is being gentrified, and like they have the critic stand in as that devil's advocate, saying that artists cause the gentrification of neighborhoods. And I think it's super interesting because it's one of those things that I think me and you went through in college. We went to college in Brookline, in Boston. You know, like we lived in Alston, which was like, it used to be, you know, not a super nice part of town, and then it became an artist's place, you know, like, because that was the only cheap part of town, you know, like where it was like, oh, all these college students who can't afford anything else live over there. And now, because it's all the culture that came with college students and art and really just like having that community there, all of a sudden the rich white people go, I want that too. That seems nice now. It wasn't nice before, but now it's nice. Let's put a Bruins stadium over there. And then and then of course that spreads. And
There's
now
always
Harvard owns all of it, and it just became it's become something completely else than what it was. And I'm not even mourning how it was when I lived there, because I lived and it started to get nice, and it's gotten a lot. It's really nice there. But it's one of those things that like, and I want, you know, I want my city to be nice, but at the same time,
but you can see the cause and effect.
Yeah, it's exactly. You can literally see it happening, because like they literally pushed. I love the way they say it in the movie. You push people to an area, and then you stifled them. You basically cut them off from the rest of the world, and were like, deal with it. And then you all of a sudden, once they start thriving, not even thriving, surviving, bringing their culture, you know, like anybody does, you know, when they show up to a neighborhood, it's kind of astounding, you know, like it's also horrifying in a way, you know, like I think I like that a lot about this movie is there's the horror of Candyman, but it's also this horror of gentrification and human callousness and dehumanization, you know, like,
Which is good because given the premise of the original film, any new Candyman, I think, should really go there and should be really transgressive. So that was sort of the appeal for me coming out. I'm like, I'm glad it went the places it did, because anything less wouldn't have felt right.
No, I agree. I think you're exactly on the money. I think that if this was just the Friday the 13th from 2000,
Halloween.
No. Friday the 13th I'm talking about.
Oh, the Friday the 13th remake? Yeah.
Yeah,
That
which
is
was
sort of
nothing, you know, like it was
it's
another Jason movie.
It
Which
might
is
as
great.
well have just, instead of a remake, it might as well have just been called Part 12 or something, because it just feels like another sequel.
Right? And
But
like
that's sort of a different
fine.
case where, like, with the Friday the 13th movies, you don't ask for much if you're a fan of those. But Candyman, while it is technically a slasher, always had something a little deeper underneath. So that's why I didn't like the initial sequel, is
Yeah.
because it sort of undermines that,
That's
like,
what
nuance.
I'm saying is that like you could try to remake your series with that Friday the 13th there and not change anything, and you just get the same thing, and it just becomes a nothing entry in your series, you know, like it's just like, hey, another one. Or what we have here, and I think that's probably my basic summary of my review of this movie, is a movie that's a step above horror movies and what I expected from a Candyman sequel, you know, like what you know, like it's just like
which
like
is good, because
step above.
you were pretty much watching just my slow excitement for this movie. The more it kept being advertised, I'm like, God, oh, this looks like it could be really good. Like, it seems like they understand it.
Yes.
And I really hope I'm not disappointed.
And I think that any fan will appreciate that, is that they understood Candyman here. Other than my main criticism, I'll just say it right here. I haven't said it yet.
Yeah.
My main
I know you've been
criticism
wanting
of the movie, is that they just got rid of the gothic feel of Candyman.
Yeah, that's fair.
And there's a lot to that gothic feel. There's that, like, the empty hallways, which they do a couple times. They do that. I feel like the whole critic section is them being like, let's bring that, like, ethereal gothic feel to it, but with the modern design. And I think that sequence really kind of nails that feel. But other than that, it doesn't ever do one of the big gothic things in the original was the gothic romance. They don't even acknowledge, like, they say it, that there's this like kind of like sexual tension, sort of excitement from saying Candyman enough times so that maybe a ghost will pop up behind you, which of course is the whole point of this, is that, you know, as a kid you would say Bloody Mary into a mirror and you'd be like, oh, who's behind me? Oh, what the? Oh,
Yeah,
you
you
know,
tempt
like,
the fates and whatnot. Although I feel like
there's
that's
something about that.
Yeah, I do agree. I understand where you're coming from. Although I feel like that is just an extension of this movie is going for very much its own thing while still
Yeah.
having resonance for the original.
But they like
So they tried
almost
not to
could
do a
have.
romance.
I feel like they almost could have done it with just one sequence at the end. They could have had him seduce her to the church instead of her getting like captured in the laundromat, which I thought was a good sequence, but it was also like one of those things where I was like, you just had to put this one little bit in here where he would be like, what was her character's name? It was Brianna. He'd be like, Brianna, join me, and you know, like,
Be my victim.
Yeah, right. Like,
yeah. So you sort of miss that, like, almost like operatic allure, and plus the original had Philip Glass's like score, which was fantastic. So it does have that like gothic score.
Is quite good. I will not discredit the score here. I think you're exactly right. I think that this score here is good, but Philip Glass, baby.
But Philip Glass.
Like, you're just like, oh. And I think that that's my only like big problem with this, is that like it's such a tonal away from the gothic and more towards modern horror / storytelling, because they're trying to talk about storytelling. And I think that gothic,
you miss it.
I miss it a little bit, you know, like, and it's just like those little hints would have taken that further. I think we get a little bit of it a couple times where you're just like, and I think they just could have, and I think that, you know, that might, it's one of those things where it might be like one of those things where it's like an early director thing. I don't know, because I can't find, you know, like they may have just shied away from that. They were like, we shouldn't have that. It's weird, you know, like
my criticism,
think there's something to it.
Yeah, I do understand that. My criticism of the movie is less so that I do miss that gothic like feel as well, but I get this, just like, this is, while still a sequel, very much going in its own direction.
I do love the shots of the upside down city.
It's great.
Doing. Like, first off, our buddy Don, or what's his Twitter handle? Oh my God,
it's a boat.
It's a boat on Twitter. He did a short when we were younger called Slumber City, and it was so funny because I saw those shots and I was like, oh, this would look good in Slumber City. Like, I was like, which is just like a, you know, like, but beside the point, that's too much of an inside joke. But like, it's one of those things where it's so dreamy, and so it's like speaking about the subject matter a little bit, you know, like, and I think that it's a good thing, and I think they almost could have used it more a couple times, you know, like, I was like, bring it up, do it again. Like,
so my primary criticism above anything else, honestly, is sometimes the way it's paced. I feel like we have scenes where we kind of hang around a little too long. And then there are other times where I feel like we're really like revving it up and trying to get through it. Like the transition before the church sequence, getting to the church sequence feels like we're fucking moving.
We're moving. Yeah, no, I agree. I think the whole ending,
and you almost
like
kind of get whiplash from it. You're like, oh, okay, we're here now. Okay, I'm not against it, but you kind of just caught me off guard.
I agree. I think they kind of go, oh, it's the third act now. And instead of like transitioning into it, like I said, you could have had that, like, and I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say, is that like maybe that gothic romance would have slowed up the pace a little bit.
It would have helped like gel together of just like lulling her to the church, as opposed to like, oh man, a dude at a laundromat just kidnapped me.
Which I love the addition of Burke. I think that because you could have just had the boy. You could have had the son of Candyman basically going, what's going on here. And which I thank God they didn't call it that. Thank God they didn't call it that. Like, because they would have just given away the whole plot. But you could like, I feel like the fans will just call this son of Candyman at some
Or
point.
some stupid shit like Candyman Lives or some garbage.
I think that might be the next one, bro.
Candyman Lives.
And I think that sorry, sorry, I'm losing it. they had Halloween Lives trailer right before
Halloween Kills.
Halloween Kills, sorry, Halloween Kills.
Which is supposed to be followed by Halloween Ends. Like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure.
Sure, all right.
John Carpenter's like, I got another one in me. Who cares? He's just like, whatever. Yeah, and I think I think you're right on the money that the pacing is good most of the time. I think that it lulls you into his like psychotic breakdown, and a lot of people call this a slow burn, which I actually disagree with highly. I think this fucking moves. I think this like it doesn't.
I was completely invested and sucked in, and it doesn't rely on cheap fucking scares.
Yeah, no, so. The one thing that was funny is that Mary came out of that and go, they turned Candyman into the Grudge, did they? And I went, oh my God, they did. Like, because that's a little bit of my other criticism is that but I also kind of like it because you have to take the sequels somewhere else, like you have to keep, and what they've done with Candyman here, instead of the original where it's like, oh, he will fuck up everybody. Who cares? He doesn't care. He just is sweet to sweet, like whoever gets it, gets it. But like in this, it's like, no. Candyman is a vengeful spirit that you can literally unleash on people, like, and it's sort of a response to this senseless violence, this like unprovoked dehumanization and murder. And
there's also a little touch about the kills, which I didn't even notice, and because I went to go see it with my brother, and he pointed this out to me, and I'm like, wait a minute, and then I had to think about it. Another thing that really leans into like the whole vengeful spirit in this movie being super transgressive, and Candyman almost acting like a spirit of vengeance for the people, especially from Cabrini Green or just black people in Chicago in general, is that there are no black victims in this movie.
Yeah, right.
None of the kills are people of color.
I was like, oh. I was like, oh, which to me, I'm like, get it.
Yeah, so was I. It's because it's almost even played for laughs. Like you have that scene with the teenagers like at the school trying to say it in the bathroom mirror. And if you notice, like it's a group of white girls and then there's like one Asian girl and she's the first one who leaves.
She's like, no, I'm out.
Like, nah, I'm out. She says it like a couple times. She's like, nah, I'm out. It's only the white girls who are just like, what's the worst that could happen?
And that's a lot of people say it like, white people being stupid in horror movies is like some of the greatest white privilege ever, because anybody else is like, no, I ain't risking this. I'm out. We ain't going in that basement. And always white people are like, we got to see what's in that basement. And you're like, no, you don't. Get out of there. But yeah, I think it's kind of funny in that way, but they use it as a vengeful spirit to, and I think that changes Candyman in a lot of ways. I think that it's like, like it changes who he is.
But I think it also works in the aspect.
No, wait, hold on. There was black victims on screen with Burke's sisters dying in the bathroom. When they
Burke's sisters?
Yeah, when they and Mary didn't remember this scene either. When they're doing the flashback.
Oh yeah, you're right, with the flashback. Okay.
And he sees, and he doesn't call him Candyman. He calls him Is it Sherman is the original guy that he thinks is his Candyman? Which is what I love about this, is like now you have his Candyman and you have your Candyman and you have like, and I'm like, ooh, they ran
the credits go through like almost like 4 different stories. Just like my Candyman was like a painter from the early 1800s, blah, 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 fell in
Right.
love with a white woman, was killed. It's like, oh, my Candyman was this dude who lived in Cabrini Green who would give kids candy. My Candyman was like this little kid on a bike. Like, just the way
Right.
myths evolve and change and shift. And I also love the aspect that Candyman can sort of infect you,
Yeah, and
because you get that bit like Burke becomes corrupted because he got stung as a child with the bee, which is the same thing that happens with our main character in the modern setting.
right.
And you get the like he starts to slowly lose his mind. He starts to get hive-like marks on all over his skin, which
I
also that was
oh
great.
oh like so good. Like that's all I really wanted from this movie was like some really good makeup effects on their Candyman,
Mhm.
and they delivered, baby. They weren't holding back. There's lots of great practical effects in this movie, and I think any horror fan will be like, get it, get it, get it, get it, because you're just like, yes, please give me a fucking throat slit that's not CGI blood, please, Jesus
Mhm.
Christ. And this movie's like, I got you, fam. And then they also do like so many. I mean, of course, it's the biggest like moment, but that's a great practical effect, is the fucking claw going into and chopping off his arm, but chopping off his arm and then the claw going into.
And then, yep,
Yeah, you're just like,
got to keep the story consistent.
you're like, Anthony, no.
I also loved the very well. It was obvious to me.
Yeah.
The very nice symbol of the church in general,
Yes.
of how on the inside it's graffitied up and it's dirty and it's sort of like a seedy underbelly, but on the outside it's literally whitewashed.
Yeah, right. You're like, oh, wait a minute. Hold up. Like it's exactly. It's like such a very clear, like,
Symbol.
you get this? Like you're
Mhm.
picking up what I'm putting down. Uh, I think that Burke as an addition is such a great addition, because it's not only Anthony McCoy's point of view being infected by Candyman. It's also Burke, you know, like I love that. I love that.
Yeah,
Like you
they
said, it goes everywhere.
yeah, and he sums it up with his line, just like Candyman ain't a he. Candyman's the whole damn hive.
Oh my God, he gives the best speech in the fucking movie when he's talking about the ground being so soiled and messed up that it just can't recover. He gives that's the best speech in the
Mhm.
whole movie. That was like, I was like, shit, dog, this is amazing, you know?
And
Like, it's like,
that was one of the big turning points where even before the third act, I'm just like, I really hope this movie goes in a direction where we get like really transgressive. And that's what I like about the third act. It's just like the idea of just like this story continues to happen over and over
over.
and over again. And we've tried playing nice. So how about we turn Candyman on you?
Yeah, right. Like, here we go. Uh, but I think that it's weird. Like I said, it kind of turns, and I think this is where some people will be kind of either like or like will be like, is Candyman as a vengeful spirit is a little strange, and I worry for sequels is basically it. I think that this movie is well thought out, well
Mhm.
done. I worry for sequels.
I really
I
don't
really
need
do.
another one, but that's also why, even
Oh,
though
you're
I
getting
could,
another one. This
yeah, I
one's
could,
definitely getting
of
another
course it's gonna get another one, but I can have my own head canon. But that's why I like the ending, and I can understand the criticisms of it feeling abrupt.
Yeah.
But it also sort of goes back to HBO Watchmen, where it ends on that point because you can have an idea of where this is going to go, sort of
Yeah.
like before the revolution starts. But anything that's in your imagination is going to be way more interesting than what they
Yeah.
might actually show in a continuation. So
No,
I
I
sort of
agree.
like that it ends on that note of just like, fuck, you're going there. And I like that the ending credit sequence also helps. Like you
Yeah.
have like the figures of multiple Candymans like standing up behind them like an army. You're like, shit.
Shit. Yeah,
But to
right.
be honest, doing that in an actual movie, I don't think they can actually pay that off. But like tickling my imagination,
Yeah.
it's amazing up here. And I would like to keep it that way.
I I agree. I think that I think they bring it to a good ending that keeps it good for you, like opened wise. Like, yeah, I see I get the whiplash to the ending, but I think the ending does a great job of being like, we're tying this all up and sending you out with your own imagination, like get out there, think about things you want to think about.
Going back to the
But
art stuff.
Gotta bring it up though.
Mhm.
Tony coming up at the end was
Yeah.
so, like,
Because
I know they
I
de-aged
knew
him,
he was
but they
I
did a
knew he
great
was
job.
yeah, I knew he was in it, and I knew it was gonna be, like, very minor, and I'm sure most of that is because if you put him in there, you gotta de-age him, and that shit ain't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm glad that, like, they built up to that as just, like, a huge moment of just, like, when you see Tony Todd at the end, that's how you know Candyman is, like,
Full power.
reborn.
And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the best parts about this movie is that, and I think that's why I think there's some pacing problems, but I think the reason why this movie moves, and it's not a slow burn, is that it's kind of a summoning, like is that
Mhm.
they're summoning Candyman and all these events, all bringing up Candyman, getting it into the zeitgeist, saying Candyman more. Gave him more power, and
Yeah.
and of course you can't miss the obvious illusion they're saying when they're like, say his name. They're bringing up George Floyd. They're bringing up so many of the victims of police violence
Mhm.
that have died in the many years.
Yeah,
And that
little stuff
passed.
like that. It's just like, oh, you can tell this is made by filmmakers who are people of color, and that's that like Jordan Peele that you can feel.
Yes,
Did not
exactly.
mean to make that rhyme, but hey.
The Jordan Peele you can feel. But I think that I like that because it really, like, it intensifies their message, like they're like, we're saying this, and then they're like, but do you understand what we're saying on top of that,
Mhm.
by saying say your name, but like alluding to George Floyd, like, is that the power is there, like, and it's not, like, and it doesn't go away, it's endless, like, this is not, I think it's almost a little, it's kind of inspiring at the end, even though
Yeah.
7
It's
cops die.
just
You're like, okay, yeah, power to you,
yeah,
Chicago.
but you also
Like,
get that sort of like powerful catharsis,
yeah,
which is nice, and you can explore that in fantasy, not just horror.
yeah, exactly. I think so. I do I do think there's some moments that have, like, I think script wise, I think there's some dialogue that is a bit iffy at times, and other
Mhm.
times is wicked great, like is so fantastic. Like I said, the speech at the end, I think there's a lot of really fantastic dialogue.
Yeah.
I just think that there's some moments where you're like, do we need to say that? Like, it made me go a little bit, like
Like
there was,
what?
it was earlier on in the movie. There was just little like bits, like transition sentences that made me
Mhm.
be like, we could have skipped that sentence,
Yeah, yeah,
like,
I get you.
like,
Because
but
that can be kinda cheesy.
yeah, and I think that uh, again, I'm bringing up these criticisms because I like this movie. Like I like this. And I think it's a step above. Obviously, most movies. I think that that's like no question. And I think that's what you come to a review for these, is to be like, is this movie worth my time? Is it a step above the other movies? And I can unequivocally say that Candyman is a step above,
Yeah,
like it,
and go
especially because Mary brought up The Grudge and we watched The Grudge afterward, and you're like, I'm glad it wasn't this. Like, like you're like, I'm glad, to be fair, the end of the American Grudge, I think that's one of the better horror sequences, of physical, like literal horror that they
Mhm.
do. And I think that that's one of the strongest parts of that movie. And I think the Grudge American movie is actually a really interesting experiment because it's the same director
Director is the
who
original.
did
Yeah.
every other one. He does. That's the crazy part. He did. There's no like offshoot or sequel he hasn't done. Like, which I think is so, like, in a world where they just hand projects to other people, especially when they're like, we're bringing a Japanese property over to America, they just usually are like, take it somebody else. And then,
Yeah.
like, thank God they had the integrity and they brought him. And I think it really actually kind of elevates that movie more than it really should, because that movie's like not good at some points, and then I think his directing and the actors really like whoop, 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 and you're like, okay, it's I get an okay reaction out of it. I got a much better reaction out of Candyman, like I think that best of all, Candyman leaves you with stuff to think about, like this isn't a thoughtless movie,
Oh yeah, my brother and I were just going off on just the car ride home. Like I was going into just like, oh, did you notice the symbol with like the church and stuff? It's whitewashed on the outside. Did you notice this? This is an allusion to this. This is an allusion to this. But that's how urban myths work. Also, the art critic is also totally. It's also supposed to represent those like bad faith criticisms of like, oh, this is so political.
Yeah,
it's that moment where she critiques his exhibit the first time, and it's just like, oh, this is derivative. I've seen it all before. Blah 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 blah. You're just as bad as we are.
Right. I exactly. That's why I love her doing that argument there, because it seems reasonable, like, and it's obviously not, like, it's like being like artists, like, make the gentrification, and you're like, no, everyone's just trying to survive up until the point where you guys are trying to make money, like, and that's kind of the message here, is they don't give a, like, the 1% don't give a shit, bro, and they will fucking kill you for it, like, and it's like, like, if it's like they don't care what you did to an area, they will get rid of you to make that money, like they don't care.
And the fact that the moment that he gets any amount of publicity because of the murders, then suddenly she's much more interested, and now suddenly seems to understand the work.
Right. I really like that sequence. I already said it. I really like that sequence in total. I especially liked the early cut. I don't know if you caught this too, of like him being like, say it. Like they're doing this like back and forth between the two of them, like him challenging her to say Candyman, and then they have that one moment where she's saying like, oh, I don't know, and then they like break the pacing of the edit to like quick cut to him, and he's closer than he was before, and he says, say it, and that's like the moment you kind of could tell he's infected, like he's like, it's in him, like it's a Candyman is here, like you're like, shit.
I enjoyed it, but almost tried not to laugh just because it's cute with the whole dark, spooky version of the Candyman can.
I was gonna say, I said one of the first things that came out of that movie being like, was like, I like that they actually use Candyman can in this movie.
Yeah,
like I know that's stupid, and I like you said, it's a little cheesy, but it started up, and I was like, I'm glad they use Candyman.
Yeah, but it's also kind of like King of the Monsters finally fucking putting the Godzilla song in a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
You're like, this should have happened.
But that art critic also has, for me, one of the better kills. I love that it's played in wide, where they pull out from the apartment windows.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great kills in this movie. I almost wanted more. Is that weird? And Mary said the same thing. Who's not a fucking gore person, she's not really like searching after that gore. She
For me, I think there was
just like, it could have been more. And I was like, kill more people. Let's go.
I think there's just enough of it, because even the original film was never really so much about the gore. And I've actually seen criticisms where people have said, I just feel like this one compared to the original is just kind of a gore fest. I'm like, not really. Because there is gore in there, but it's pretty tame.
The original has fuckloads of blood. Like, fuckloads.
Yeah, blood. It has a lot of blood, but most of the actual kills are just like insert here. You don't actually see anything go in. You hear a bunch of grunts. We cut away. Like, you don't actually get to see gore, but you do see a lot of aftermath of kills.
I will say, I think that's one of the things about this movie, is that this movie is made for horror fans. This movie is made for fans of the original film, and who want that expansion of the universe, that want that next step, instead of just like, give me more Candyman. Like,
but it also is good at bringing in new viewers, because like my brother's seen the original, but it's been a bit, so he didn't remember too much about it. And it was good that they had the summation of what happened in the first film and how it builds upon that with, like you said, without just straight up using footage from the original movie.
Right. Which they could have done, but the same, and I think the same thing could be said for Deathly Hallows. They could have like shot some flashback to the actual Deathly Hallows doing stuff, and it wouldn't have been as effective. It would have been cool to see. You would have been like, "Wow, so cool to see that."
But it might not have worked because when you go to like mythic storytelling or fairy tales or oral myths, they oftentimes don't add up or make sense because there's like that ethereal, just like fairy tale quality to them. It's just like where if you think about it from a logical standpoint, they kind of fall apart, but that's not the point. It's just telling a story. So something like Deathly Hallows works that they made that animated sequence instead, because trying to do that live action, it might have seemed a little weird.
Yeah, and I think that here you could have used flashbacks. I think plenty of horror sequels do the slow motion, low frame rate flashbacks to older movies, and they could have just done that. They could have. And I think taking the time and effort to do that really elevates it. And I think that can be applied to everything. I'm bringing up Sonic again for another fucking second week in a row, but I'm playing through Sonic Forces, and I'm gonna play Colors afterwards, which I heard was broken on Switch. We'll play it. But basically, I think that sometimes, like, there's a lot of great qualities to a Sonic game, and everyone knows what makes up a Sonic game. But what elevates one Sonic game from the other is perfecting the formula, but also taking the care and time to do great animation, to do those like sequences you wanted to see as a fan, like to really like elevate the project with just animation, and adding feeling and emotion to what you're doing. And I think that Sonic games are elevated when they do that, like when they can like really step up. Like that's why Sonic Mania is the reigning king, because every little thing on that screen seems purposeful, and it seems well thought out and well done. And I think that that's the great part about the animation in Candyman. It doesn't feel careless like a flashback to the old movie. It feels like they're like, no, we want that. First off, I love the shadow puppet idea that they're doing and how complicated it gets at points, and
the fact that they give like a reason for it in the text,
right? It's like you see Burke doing it as a young child, and you're like, oh hell yeah. So it's like all these extra things really elevate this project, I feel like, and really take it above your modern horror sequels, especially in a world where we keep getting pretty bad horror remake sequels,
like again, I almost hate shitting on Halloween 2018, because as much as I talk shit about it all the time, I don't dislike 2018, but it has a lot of stupid fucking choices.
Okay, wait, hold on. So we're talking about okay. We're not talking about 2007. Okay. I actually haven't seen Halloween, this one, the 2018. I actually haven't seen this one yet. I'm behind. It's another like fans who are listening to this episode.
It's a reboot. It's a reboot sequel, just like Candyman. It's ignoring all the sequels. It's even not doing what H20 did, where it's just like we're ignoring everything but the first two. It's even ignoring 2. So the whole like Laurie is Michael's sister's thing is gone.
Really? So So is Jamie Lee Curtis her sister still, or is it like
no?
Does she finds it out in this movie or something? No. Wow. Okay.
That aspect of it is just gone.
Wow, I didn't realize that. Okay, that's interesting. What a weird change.
So Laurie it's just going by the first film, where Laurie is just kind of a victim of circumstance.
That's interesting. He doesn't have a personal stake in taking her down, or she doesn't have a personal stake in taking him down, other than he's killed all these people that
so it's more just like trauma and revenge, knowing that he's going to come back for her. And for him, it's sort of just back to that ambiguity of the first one, where he's just like, there is no purpose to Michael Myers,
which I dig that.
That's one of the ideas I like. But there's just really stupid shit in 2018 that just like really gets under my skin.
Yeah,
And
I'll
to be
have
fair,
to
it's
watch
also
it.
just to be fair, it's also a matter of just being beaten down by so many bad Halloween movies that even when a decent one comes out, it's sort of like too little, too late.
It's actually kind of funny. Deshaun's like, no, you've been gone for too long. I won't stand here and take this shit. I'll just
Yeah.
go back and watch the originals.
But there's stuff I like about it. I'm almost excited for Halloween Kills only because now that we're done with the first one, we can get rid of all the fucking member berry shit of just like, you remember the first one? You remember the first one? And we can just
I
go
love
in a
that.
different direction.
Memberberry. That's a great way to put it.
It's
'Cause
perfect. It's literally perfect.
It's so true because it's like so many of these sequels are like, you remember that first one wasn't that good, and you're like, shut the fuck up, like please.
Like I can't because like Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also getting one, which is like its fucking fourth.
Yes.
That's like the
it's
franchise that's been
Spider-Man.
rebooted the most. Yeah.
It's like it's the Spider-Man of the horror franchises. They're like, nope, restart it again. Who cares? And you're just like, no, we care. Stop. Like, and I think that's why this is more for the original fans than like any of the other Candyman sequels are, because this one's like, you know, like this is for you guys, you know, like this is
this one gets it more.
This isn't a remake. This isn't a restart. This one's moving forward with the pathos.
With a Candyman movie, I don't want just mindless entertainment and gore. I want that from a Friday the 13th sequel.
Yes, please.
Like I know what I want. Like I'm easy to please when it comes to something like that. But with Candyman was always about something.
Yes. And I think that's what makes this, and I hate to say it, but breathe, you know? Like this is what makes this thing stand up on its own, is that it has something to say, not only social commentary, you know, about gentrification and racism and basically white supremacy, is that it also has a lot to say about the Candyman mythos, what Jordan Peele feels like, or Nia DaCosta feels like needs to step forward to be a modern legend, you know, like, and I think that it's I'm kind of astounded, you know, like I really you know, like a lot of these, I think when I'm saying breathing, I'm definitely thinking of the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where that movie doesn't feel like it's breathing. It doesn't have a fucking pulse.
Yeah, the weird thing about the Nightmare remake is that it's at its best when it's doing new shit. Like there's stuff to like in that movie. Like
but when
they're
doing frame remakes, you're like ugh.
Jackie Earl Haley is a good actor, and I actually like him in the part, even if it's like there's no way you can like top Robert Englund. It's just too iconic a thing to try and top.
My thing is he's still alive. Like fucking use him, you know? Like it's like, and I.
But it's a remake. We got to do something different.
But that
was like that era. Like if we did it now we, instead of doing remakes, now we do reboot/sequels where we kind of can like scratch the itch of remaking it, but it's still tied to original continuity, so people won't be mad.
Yeah, exactly. I think, or they will be mad.
Yeah, we found the compromise. But with the Nightmare film, like there are things I like about that, and it's all just shit that's not really just like remember the first one. Like the characterization is nice, the performances are good. They really lean into sleep deprivation and the effects it has on you a lot more than the original does, and all that stuff is good. And also the idea, until they chickened out of it, that maybe Freddy actually wasn't doing anything with the kids.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he was actually innocent the entire time. I'm like, huh, if you actually stuck with that, you would have had a take, but then you chickened out at the end.
And I think that's one of the things right at the beginning they do with Candyman. And I think it's so interesting that they're telling Burke's story of meeting Sherman for the first time. And I love that because you see him come out, and as a fan, you're like, that's not Todd. You know, like, it's your first thought. You see him come out and you're like, he's standing funny. And you're like, and it's like funny because you're like, it's not Candyman. This is, and it immediately like, it like changes it. And I love that because it like it as a fan, your visceral reaction is immediate, but then that like you're like, oh, but we're telling a story here, you know, like we actually have a take that's you know, gonna move forward. And I was like, oh
yeah, it's just one of those things like, where's Tony Todd? Where's Tony Todd? Just like, give it a sec. We have to earn Tony Todd.
You gotta earn Tony Todd. And I think they did a great job of building him up to that moment. I think that, you know, like,
the DA
I
thing
literally
was also...
cheered. I literally cheered in the theater. I know I've only gone to see. I'm finally back in theaters, guys. I saw Shang-Chi last week, and I saw the Candyman this week, and I gotta say, I just want to fucking cheer and clap for every fucking frame of on the screen. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. I missed movies so fucking
I'm glad
much.
Because if you didn't go see Candyman, because I really wanted to talk about it, I was going to get on you. It's just like, oh man, Frank, you're falling back into your old habits pre-lockdown, not going to see anything that isn't a blockbuster.
No, I loved seeing things in theaters this past 2 weeks. I've you know, seen Shang-Chi and Candyman. It's not even 2 weeks. It's this past couple days. And I almost want to fucking cry, man, because it's like, it's such a great feeling to see these big pieces of art on a big screen. I know, and it sounds so stupid to say that because I got a big screen at home. What are you talking about? And I do too. I got a 4K 50 inch, you know, like it's a big boy, you know, it's not huge, but I think
the red letter media joke about finally being able to watch films that were normally only in theaters at home pretty much sums it up.
Yeah, I think they did it perfectly.
When you're in
all the interruptions.
When you're in a place where your primary focus is the screen and what's being presented in front of you in a dark room with a bunch of strangers, and you're just there for that one thing, as opposed to like, yeah, I'm watching this here, but I'm also texting, and also these tweeting. Kids and all these kids are running around, blah 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 blah. That's the difference.
It is the difference. And it's like, and there's just nothing better than actually feeling the soundtrack, like and the sound effects with the inside a theater, you know, like the booming of the actual system, and just the psychology of like, you left your house to come to this place and you paid money to be here, so this is going to get your undivided attention, right? And I don't know if if I just went to the right theaters this week, because you know, they're newer movies, so they're putting them on the big screens, but fuck, it was a giant screen. Like, I don't know. Like, I think Shang-Chi was like some weird, like, not IMAX, but IMAX. But it's like emulated IMAX, but not true, like, they
size.
They call it something else, like RPX or something like that. But
I'm doing that for Shang-Chi later because they were literally the only seats that were left. So I'm like, okay, I guess kind of IMAX. Let's go.
That's what I saw, and I gotta say, that's what I meant by see it in the biggest theater screen possible. But that's next week's review. Stop talking about Shang-Chi right now. We're not talking about it till next week. This is a little preview for next week, guys.
What did you think about Candyman?
So she liked it a lot, but she said she did like it a lot because like she said, it does take that step above. And you know, and we definitely liked it, but it was, but she said it changes it a bunch to be a vengeful spirit that you can sick on people, you know, like and it does make it kind of, and it's funny because I'm saying The Grudge, but what I mean by it's kind of like The Grudge is they even bring it up when they're talking about it at the end with that great speech that I said Burke says, is that if something awful just keeps happening in the same place, the soil of that place is going to be not only like tarnished, but like rotted, you know, like, and I think that's like it's such a great analogy because it's bringing up, and Mary was saying this too, is that like poverty is not only like a, you know, like a stress on your life. It's a health problem, you know, it shortens your life. It takes years off your life, and stress. They literally say, like, I saw a chart one time of like, they with money decreases in salary, your back just arcs down. It's almost like the foot of capitalism fucking stepping on your back.
Stepping on your back, yeah.
Like, and it's like, it's one of those things that like they're saying such a great thing here that like, you know, like that and I think what she's saying about the grudge is that the grudge is like a vengeful spirit that was stuck in a place because something awful happened, and that was just one angry, awful spirit. Think about hundreds, thousands of angry spirits, you know, like that's what Candyman is now, you know, like,
yeah, that's sort of the idea of just like every one of us has a Candyman in us because this is just an endless cycle of violence,
yeah,
and oppression.
And I think that's important to oppression because it's not perpetuated, you know, like it's not like, well, it is perpetuated, but not by the people that are obviously they're trying to blame all the time, you know,
people
like,
just trying to live, and also just that more ethereal idea of just like places. It's like places have like memory, and places have energies.
Yeah, I think I think it was smart to bring it back to the green, and
it was one of those things where like they took actual history to its advantage. Just like, oh, if you're gonna do a Candyman sequel, we should touch upon Cabrini Green, which is more or less gone now. Make that a part of the story.
Right. I think that's also why it doesn't feel as violent as it probably should, is because there's no one there, you know, like that's kind of,
it keeps it very isolated.
Yeah, it keeps it very isolated. And I think that's kind of interesting part where it feels
Which
like
is
Candyman's roaming a very packed, like almost a sardine can, a bus of people, you know, like, and that's what's so scary about the originals, that he's just kind of loose in this, in this place, and he's in the walls, you know, like, and that's what.
But I think that also speaks to like how weak Candyman is at this point and how he needs to like gain power.
Yeah, exactly.
So it makes sense that it's mostly with this small group. One of the criticisms I've also seen, and I hesitate to call it a plot hole just because the term plot hole has been co-opted by the most annoying people in the world. But it is one of those things where they do bring up just like the way these murders seem to keep being tied back to our main character. You would think the police would hit him up, especially because he's a person of color, and that's like there's that inherent bias. I imagine they pushed away from that because if you go into that route of just like he's being blamed for murders that he didn't really do, you lean too much into material from the first movie again.
Yeah, because that and I think, and you can see in the trivia on IMDb, they actually did have a plot with what's the name of the original character, Jennifer? I forget what her name is, but they actually had a plot where they brought back the original actress and they were going to do more of her in the movie.
Oh,
Helen. Sorry, Helen, not Jennifer. Helen. And they were going to do more of her in the movie. But like I think you said, is that I think they felt like they were trotting the same path again, you know, like the being accused of murders you didn't do, you know, like, which obviously in the first movie, they're like, now you feel what it's like to be black, and you're like, well, that was ham-fisted. Like, but you're like, but in it, like that's why I think that moving away from that to an act of violence, like put upon them is better. You know, like you know, I think that like I think it's. I gotta say this, it is quite good. I love the special effects. I think that this is worth seeing in theaters too, you know, like this is if you're a big horror fan, this is one of the year's best horror wise, I think, and no question in my mind.
This is one that's going to stick with me for a bit, and I will buy it physically to support it, and it'll be right next to my original film because I sure as hell don't own 2 and 3 and don't plan to.
Yeah, right. Like, no, I'm good. But really, I agree. I think that this is one of those ones that people, it could have been a nothing movie, and it's surprising that they were able to have a voice, have something to say, have great practical effects, and really deliver something sort of sad. You know, like I think some people will be unsatisfied, but most of all, some people will be very satisfied that we can expand this mythos and go further because Candyman deserves it. It's
And
the
also
original's a fucking cult classic, and it
It
deserves
also has
more.
some film history added to it because I think it was Slash Film that put out an article for it where Candyman is the first film that's #1 at the box office, directed by a female black director.
Wow, that is big. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. Because it's the same thing as I keep bringing up Shang-Chi, but it's the same thing as Shang-Chi, where it's like even the head of Disney was like Shang-Chi's an experiment. It looks like a good experiment. It's like these executives are so first off degrading, but also like being like, oh well, we don't think that will do well, you know, like because it's not Matt Damon in the lead or something, you know, like it's like come on, you know, like that is and I love Shang-Chi breaking records because and Candyman breaking records because you're like shut the fuck up. It's a big like sit down to them, you know.
Given that like Wonder Woman 84 didn't do the numbers they wanted, the fact that Batgirl movie that they're developing is supposed to be going straight to HBO Max, and so is the Black Canary movie, I'm like, twice is not a pattern, but I'm watching you.
Yeah, I exactly. I think Warner Brothers, you're like guys,
I'm keeping an eye on you.
Yeah, like don't do this. Like
don't you start.
Don't you start with some bullshit where you're like, oh, it's a female director, send it to HBO Max. You're like you motherfuckers. Like Jesus Christ, these are talented artists. Please give them the fucking platform.
Yeah,
you know? Like,
and while it's nice to have like that sort of like that little milestone, it does speak to how behind we are.
You're like,
given that it's 2021 and we're still doing firsts shit.
Right? You're like, hey, why? What?
Like we're still on firsts.
Right? It's sad in a way, you know, like, and I'm glad we can break these barriers now and keep moving forward. I actually think that this is one of those movies that Nia DaCosta should be hired a lot more for. This is one of those things that she had not only a visual, great visual storytelling here. There's also, a great script and, a great soundtrack. This is something that has the qualities to take somebody even further.
Yeah.
And I hope they can do it, you know, like, and just keep building. I hope they don't pigeonhole her and are like, here's Candyman 2, you know, like I hope that she can do whatever she wants.
I think she's attached to something bigger now.
Yeah?
I think
that's one of the stupid things that they started to do in IMDb. If it wasn't a completely confirmed future project, they don't put it on IMDb anymore. It has to be like,
which is weird
confirmed.
because IMDb would just literally put like to be determined or like rumored or something like that.
They got rid of it because I think it was confusing to their database. I think it was like, wait, this movie's actually never coming out.
Either that or a bunch of people not reading the fine print.
Yeah,
and just being like, yo, it's on IMDb, it's confirmed.
They're like, oh yeah, like, because I was trying to see who was involved with the new Batgirl movie, like you were saying, because I know that they hired the girl from In the Heights, which I think is a great casting choice as Barbara, and I was trying to find it out, and I couldn't find anything on that movie on IMDb.
There it is. She's attached. She's supposed to do the Marvels.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah.
Oh man, because. I mean, I fucking love the Marvels. I think it's I mean, I don't mean to be like that at all, but like if you give me anything by Alex Ross, I'm like, hell yeah, give it, please.
You're
like,
thinking I'm gonna.
Am I missing up Marvels?
You're mixing up Marvels.
No.
You're thinking no, you are. Like Alex Ross's Marvels is a thing, but the Marvels is the Captain Marvel sequel.
Oh.
They're calling it the Marvels because we're involving Monica Rambeau from WandaVision, and it'll probably have Kamala Khan like Miss Marvel in it. So instead of Captain Marvel 2, it's just the Marvels.
Okay. Well, actually, her being in charge of that makes me a lot more confident for that movie. Because the first one we've talked about before is a huge miss and just kind of forgettable. And I think if you're gonna bring in Camilla, you gotta do it right. And I hope they I hope they can. And I think that's what I get from her here, is that she loves the material and wants to do right by it. And I think that's what's gonna happen. I hope that's what happens with Miss Marvel.
And hey, she's already worked with Tiana Paris, who's Monica Rambeau, so that'll be easy.
You got me hyped up. I wanted a fucking Marvel.
I know. I'm sorry.
For a second,
the moment you were so excited about it, I'm like, did he mix it up? And then you said Alex Ross. I'm like, oops, not that one.
Not that one. Because, like, I mean, come on. It's just being like, Kingdom Come was great. You want to do Kingdom Come in the Marvel Universe? And they're like, yeah, I do. Yeah, I do want to do that. And you're like, and I'm like, please. I would absolutely watch a movie where it was, what's the main actor in this movie?
Yeah, Abdul-Mateen.
Thank you so much. If he was just the photographer in, first off, either Kingdom Come or in Marvels, he could be the main character in either or, and I would be like, nailed it. Let's move on. You know, like, because if they don't do Kingdom Come as a fucking either live action or a animated movie soon, I'm first off gonna lose my fucking mind. And Marvel's absolutely deserves a much bigger lens on it, because it's a gorgeous, first off, it's a gorgeous book, and it's full of just like Alex Ross being like, have you seen me draw Spider-Man before? No, here you go. Have you seen me draw the Fantastic Four? No, here you go. And like it's just kind of, it's like Kingdom Come has, I feel like, more story instead of Alex Ross flexing, and Marvel's is just him flexing the whole time. And you're like, I'm okay with this, but I would absolutely watch a movie.
Who wrote Marvels?
Oh shit, who did write Marvels?
Because when we talk about it, we mostly talk about Ross's artwork, but Kingdom Come isn't just about the artwork, because you got fucking talent like Mark Waid on it.
Yeah, and I think that really fucking sends it that step above. Marvels is how do I say his name? Busiek?
Kurt Busiek? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I mean, come on, he's doing what he does in Marvels is awesome, because they do like the start of the Marvel universe with the Human Torch and everything, and you're just like, so good.
I like it when certain stories for comic book universes try to condense it in real time. That's why I like Superman, Batman Generations. The fact that it's just like, what if they did start in the late 1930s and then actually aged in real time? Like, I like stories like that.
Just so you guys know, you can buy Marvels. If you're like, what? I haven't read Marvels yet. You can get it for hardcover on sale right now on Amazon for $37.49 instead of the $50. And then I think it's $18.99 paperback. So, but don't support Amazon. Buy it at Newberry Comics or something. Don't support Amazon or something. Buy it at an actual comic book shop. I'm sorry for bringing up Amazon. But basically, guys, do you have anything else you want to add to this Candyman review?
I think I got it out of my system. This was a big one I really wanted to talk about, because like we said, it does have a lot to say, and it surprised me, and it made me happy in ways that I didn't think it would, because I was always worrisome of just the idea on paper.
Yes, I think that's basically it. If you go in like we did, being like, please don't be a bad sequel, and then it's not, you're gonna like this, you know, like, because this is not a bad sequel. But I think there's a lot of people who will be divided because they added more rules, and some people are like, oh, now I don't understand the rules, like, you know, like, I think that might happen to a few people. But or they'll be like, but that wasn't the rules in the first one. You're like, well, stories have to fucking expand, bruh.
Or some like, too political, woke garbage bullshit.
Oh my god. But seriously though, I went through IMDb and just downvoted all the people it literally brought up anything about politics on their review. If they said this movie is a good scary movie, but it's got too much politics, you're like, shut the fuck up. Even that, I'm like, shut up. Like, you're just like, it's because again, I'll say it, a movie doesn't always have to say something. It doesn't always have to say something, but this is art. Like, movies are art. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about art, and art needs to move and say something and affect you. And I think that that's what this movie does, and I think that's why it's so damn effective, is that it actually has something to fucking
A
say.
lot of stories you consume are political, whether or not the politics went over your head.
Yeah, all you Star Wars fans who are right wingers, sorry, bruh. I got something for you. You a stormtrooper, motherfucker. But
Yeah.
no. But beside the point is that this is worth seeing. Go see it in theaters. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Warp Shelf. Another remote episode. We hope to soon be in person, but hopefully you like this format. You can see we tried to make our warp shelves kind of line up, sort of, so you can see our warp shelves behind us. Even Deshaun's, you don't get to see that often, so I think that's hopefully an added treat for you guys. And really, if you have any questions about the backgrounds, please drop it in the section. Like, you're like, Frank, where'd you get that dope ass stand for your Game & Watch? And you're like, I got it on an Etsy store, bitch. And you know, ask anything else. But basically, guys, thank you for supporting the show. You can check out all the episodes on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. If you want to listen to the audio version, please go to galaxygeek.com, where we post all the episodes, and you can see them in both formats, all on there. So it's all that step up. And at some point, we want to, if we can, I think the next step is getting transcripts of the episodes and putting them below on Galaxy Geek, so that way, if you're like, I'm sitting in a meeting, I can't listen to the podcast, you could be like, what did Frank say? What did Deshaun say? Like, you know, like, you can scroll all the way down. So hopefully that's the next step. We're looking into it. But guys, please check out on Instagram and Twitter our individual tags. I'm Yupfrank on there.
I'm Modcrack on there.
And guys, thank you so much for listening. Feed the beast, comment, like, whatever makes the YouTube algorithm
what you gotta
move.
do. If you like it, share it.
And guys, we'll see you next week with, like we said before, our Shang-Chi review. How did they say it? I love that they made the joke in the movie, because I was like, I can't fucking say that name either.
I've always said Shang-Chi just because Shang vocally sounds really white.
Yeah, it sounds super Shang-Chi. And I think that I love that they made that joke in the movie, because I was like, yes, I needed this. Please say it a bunch more times, please. I obviously need the lesson. I'm a dumbass. But guys, tune in for that episode next week, and I'm excited to talk about it. So thank you for tuning in, and have a good one.